Support the channel on patreon.com/manlightfoot. Simple thoughts. It's certainly been some time since we last spoke, huh? Seems to be some big changes that have occurred. Hint, hint. I'm just kidding. It's only been like a few weeks since the last video. This is just something I kind of have to wear now. Stigmatism. But in today's episode, I wanted to talk about something that's been sort of on my mind, mostly because of recent events, and that's mainly having to do with the premiere of season 2 of The Ghost and Molly McGee on Disney+. I recently did a sit down and think episode talking with the creators about the show, and as some time passed, like more or less a few days, I started thinking more about the sort of impact that the show has, or more or less the way the show carries itself. And that's mainly having to do with its take on positivity. And I think it's just a show that really understands that concept of positivity, you know? It's something where they basically took something that seems so simplistic, something that's like been done to death, you've seen all the ins and outs of it and such, but they put such a unique spin to it that honestly, I think they are kind of the masters at it in a sense. And it's mainly having to do with how they use their characters and the type of situations they go through. You know, because the main premise, you know, is the idea of these two characters. One who's very upbeat and positive. The other is a ghost who is pretty much down and dour. And they basically come into each other's lives and change each other for the better. And I think that's something I find unique, because it's usually that sense of them, the complete opposites attract, you know? But they do it in a way of understanding we can't have these characters hate each other. They even mentioned that in the interview I did with them. Of course, they start off a little rough, but they easily warm up to each other very fast. Molly, obviously, with Scratch, considering she's so upbeat. But I think it's just something I like in how they managed to build a natural sense of progression between these two. Like, Scratch is definitely someone who's like, he's down in the dumps, quite literally, when we first meet him, but he learns to become a more positive ball of energy because Molly is such a ball of energy, you know? And that's just something you would think about, because at the end of the day, it's Scratch is dead. He's not alive. So he has every right to just not be happy. But they build on that aspect where it's like he could be down in the dumps wallowing and being sad about the fact that he's not living anymore. But they were able to have Molly actually push him to be better, to do good things. And you would think it would be tired, you would think it wouldn't work. But they do something a bit unique by having them actually be able to see from each other's point of views on a lot of things. Like one particular episode, they have it so Molly is not allowed to say no to anything, because her whole thing is, no, you should always say yes to everything. And it's like, you know, she's supposed to learn. It's like that sometimes you gotta say no. And she's put through all these trials and tribulations where it's like, yeah, you have to do all these horrible things you very much don't like doing. She learns a valuable lesson that it's like, it's okay to say no sometimes. Some people might have hurt feelings, others might perfectly understand, especially since some of the stuff she had to do involved like skunks and such, and something involving magicians, since she really hates magicians for some reason. I don't know, I guess she's just not a believer of the dark arts. But it's just interesting how they went about it, because you would think with Molly being so positive that that's where they would go, with just her only being super positive. But they do something unique by being reasonable about it, if anything. Like, they know it's like, yeah, you should be positive, but you also gotta be real about these things. It's okay to have a happy outlook on things, but you should recognize when things aren't as great, you know? You gotta recognize, you gotta feel the right type of feelings in certain moments. And that's something I think I enjoy a lot about this series. That we see Molly is this positive ball of energy, but she has a different range of emotions. She can feel sad, she can feel angry, and all that. She's not just the positive person. And I think that's something that speaks to a type of positivity that I think a lot of us can really get on board with. I think that's what speaks to a lot of the fans who watch it. They recognize Molly is not a perfect being, sunshines and roses all around type person. Like, I appreciate that they're all learning from each other. Like, Scratch becomes an even more positive person as things go on, because this whole thing is that he's supposed to be scaring people and making everybody miserable. But he ends up changing for the better and stops the whole scaring thing. I mean, he was kind of low on that aspect in the beginning because he was just lazy, but now it's just more of a he scares if it's more of a just to mess with somebody, not because it's a job thing, or if he just personally doesn't like somebody. But I think that's what I find fascinating is that he manages to change for the better because Molly. Like, he ends up getting to a point where it's like he can't properly scare people. He becomes like a fluffy character now when he tries, and it's like, she really messed you up. Like, she got under his skin. Or, granted, she would if he had any skin. But it doesn't really just stop at those two, honestly. There's like a great sense of positivity throughout. A lot of it having to do with Molly and them. Like, but it does also affect the other characters. Like, say, Libby. Libby is someone who at the start was like super shy, just trying to stay hidden, not trying to make a scene or anything like that. But once Molly enters the picture, that's when things change for her. She starts becoming more outgoing. She starts looking at things in a bit more of a different light. She's not as dour on things, and it's all because that positive energy. That's something that you just can't really deny, is that the positive energy is what really works so well in this series. And of course, Libby became a fan favorite because so many people can relate to the whole introvert being introduced to an extrovert, and next thing you know, it's like you're more outgoing, and it's a proven formula. Like, that's what really works about this series, is that it shows off that it's like, yeah, you can't always just be hidden to yourself. You gotta get out in the world, you gotta be out there with other people and talking. And, that's what I even pointed out, is that this show has a good sense of community. Because what Molly does, she goes around and happifying everything. And we're constantly seeing her, so-called happifying the citizens that live in Brighton, their hometown. It's all working for the best for Brighton. Everybody's more positive. She's even helping in the economy, weirdly enough. And I think that's something I really enjoy, is that they show that this sense of positivity can really do wonders, if you just have a good positive outlook on things. Of course, like I said, be real when things happen, but at the same time, it's like you still gotta have a good energy about yourself. You can't just spend time just sitting and wallowing in your feelings all the time. You gotta be willing to say, we gotta do something here. We gotta actually change things. This feeling, yeah, you gotta feel your feelings, but you can't just always be stuck on that one feeling, To be human means feeling everything. And this show really got that down. That's something I have to appreciate at the end of the day. Because we see how the community comes together and starts fixing things up, cleaning up the neighborhoods and everything. But we also get to see that they, in return, because someone's giving all that good energy to them, they give it back. That one episode where basically Molly and her family are about to be kicked out of their house because they just couldn't pay the rent or pay off their mortgage. And, like, it's so relatable to so many people because a lot of people live in the red. And it's like, yeah, if you mess up a payment, you can be out on your butt. Like, and the town came together to help pay off that mortgage for them so they can get the house back. And you can't fake it was amazing to see, but you understand where it all comes from because the whole season, or the whole first season, was building on that. And we see it all pay off so well. The town just all comes together to say, we love this family. We don't want you to leave. You helped bring such great energy to us. We were all such negative Nancy's, but now it's just, amazing. Now everybody's happy, the economy's doing great, we're just in a good standing. That's just a powerful thing that this show was able to touch upon. But it also stems to how they do a little bit of subversion on these characters as well, and that's something I also can really appreciate, honestly.
The Ghost and Molly McGee! The Ghost and Molly McGee!
I work hard so you could follow your dream. You are talented, T-Rock. You always have been. So stop selling pork and get back to your art.
Now, something that I really enjoy in this show is how they subvert some expectations on certain characters. Andrea, for instance, was a character you would think would just be your typical valley girl, mean girl type. But no, they change it up pretty fast. In the first episode she's introduced, it's like, oh, she is shallow. She is shallow. But they managed to be smart about how they went about it. It's clear that it's like, as they started, that's where they were leaning. But as they went along, they realized, do we really want a super mean girl character in a show that's supposed to be very positive? And they change her up big time, you know? Like, the way she is in the first episode is far removed from how she is moving forward in the series, even in the second season, definitely. And I think I like that they did that they changed it so it's like she seems shallow, but there's a little depth to her. You know, we understand that it's like she's kind of neglected by her family. She really wants some attention from her family, but they do something interesting. They make it so she doesn't stand with her family all the time on a lot of things, because her family does start off as just simple, oh, they're the rich folk who don't care for others types. You know, they'll do anything because, you know, capitalist pigs. But the funny thing is that Andrea doesn't stick by them on a lot of things. We see the episode where it's like fundraising and such, and you would think she's being selfish and all that, but no, she decides to do something different. She's like, okay, because the whole thing about her was that she was suspected of cheating the fundraiser, you know, by just buying up all the candies that she was supposed to be selling. But with her doing that, it's like, okay, they still get the money. There's no real harm done. It's like, okay, she bought all the candy herself. Big whoop. I mean, sure, she technically gets a prize at the end, and it's unfair to those who actually were trying to sell a lot, but at the end of the day, they still got, the charity got the money. That's all that mattered. And we find that it's like she mainly did this as a means to get some attention from her parents, to show that it's like, hey, I'm a good kid, please acknowledge me, you know? And it's interesting that they went that route. And you might be wondering, is this still sticking to that concept of positivity? And it's like, yes, it does. Because that sense of positivity is a bleed over from Molly, you know? We see that Molly is such a positive ball of energy that it bled into Andrea's development, in the sense that we see she knows right from wrong. You know, we would easily think it's like, oh, okay, she's the mean girl who has to go through some type of lesson to learn to be a better person or something like that. But no, they say, you know what, the residual positiveness of Molly just bleeds over. You know, it already went into the community, so, and Andrea's part of the community, so that's how she was able to just have how it was able to affect her properly. And we see something work out in that regard. That's just something I really appreciate that they were able to do for Andrea, because, like I said, she could have been a basic, stereotypical, cliched character, but they knew to break things up on that front. And that's the thing. It stands on all the other fronts, even on the family's end, because you see how it's like they're in the red all the time, but they love keeping a good energy about themselves. You think they're always struggling, and that's that relatability factor. We see stuff like Sharon having to work as a gig pig, you know, just to help make ends meet. But we also see the other aspects to more interpersonal stuff, you know. In the more recent episodes, like from season 2 that just dropped, they show Sharon having to finally get back into painting. But the thing is, she's struggling to really find inspiration. She's just looking at a blank canvas the whole time. For the episode, she doesn't really paint yet for most of it. You know, because it's like she doesn't know what to do. She's just intimidated by it. She's afraid. But the thing is, it's understanding that it's like, yeah, you don't need to make something perfect. You just need to make something. It doesn't have to be a Da Vinci painting or anything like that. It could literally be whatever. Like, if you just want to paint a ladybug, go ahead. It's because art is just an expression of self. It doesn't have to be, and emotions are messy. That was a lesson in that episode I really loved. That it's like, art is just expressing your emotions, but emotions are messy anyway, so they can't be perfect, obviously. And I just love that they were doing that, like that positive attitude that they had, where it's like they could be mad that it's like, wow, you really spent all this time. You could spend all that wallowing just thinking, wow, I should have done something. But no, it's like, yeah, if you had to sit there for a minute, fine, but at least you got moving. That's the thing, because it's so easy to just sit and wallow in your feelings and just think, yeah, that's all you need to do, just be depressed about it. But it's like, no, you gotta do something. Sure, some of us have certain mental blocks on us, but it's like you still gotta do something, whether it's like take medication, go to therapy, talk with some friends, get outside more, or something. It's like you gotta be moving, you know. It's not enough to just sit and wallow. And that positive messaging is what I think stands perfectly for Molly McGee, is that they recognize positivity is a powerful weapon against the darkness. You know, it's something that we always need to be willing to wield. It's not something everyone can wield, but it's something you have to at least try. That's what I think speaks so strongly with this series. And I think that's why a lot of people love this series, because it is something different on that aspect. It took a simple concept, but it expanded upon it. It did more with it that you thought couldn't really be done. And I think that's why a lot of us gravitate to the show, gravitate to these characters. And I think that's what speaks to the amazingness that is the Ghost and Molly McGee, honestly. It's a great show, and I think more people definitely need to be checking it out. It's just so good, especially with the new season coming out with some pretty banger episodes already out there on Disney Plus. It's definitely a good watch, and you're definitely gonna feel the sense of inhabification that they're trying to make you feel, honestly. But that's just a thought.